Today, one of the Pentagon officials who couldn't explain that delay in dispatching the Guard on January 6th, one of the officials who couldn't explain it, but nevertheless testified about it, was a general named Charles Flynn. General Charles Flynn is the younger brother of Trump National Security Advisor Mike Flynn, who, of course, called on Trump supporters to come to the Capitol on January 6th, who publicly called on Trump to declare martial law and have the military take over the country and rerun the election in swing states where Trump lost. Mike Flynn's brother, Charlie, on January 6th, was the Deputy Chief of Staff of the United States Army, which he described as essentially being the COO, the Chief Operating Officer of the United States Army. After the attack happened on January 6th, when hard questions started to be asked about why the National Guard wasn't there, why the National Guard took so long to get there, why request after request after request to the Pentagon produced no help at all for hours and hours and hours. When hard questions first started to be asked about what happened there, the Pentagon initially made false public statements saying that General Charles Flynn, Mike Flynn's younger brother, had nothing to do with fielding any of those requests for help or taking part in any of the decision-making about whether the National Guard would actually be deployed to help save the Capitol. Those were false denials from the Army that Charlie Flynn was involved. Today, General Flynn explained to the House Oversight Committee that he was involved in those decisions and in that planning, even though, like I said, he didn't have answers for what went so wrong and why it took the Guard 5 hours to get there. We still don't know why the Pentagon lied initially about General Charles Flynn and said he wasn't involved in those decisions. We also still don't know why the Pentagon sat on its hands for hours instead of sending anyone to help, even though they very well knew exactly what was going on and were directly fielding panicked calls from lawmakers asking for help. We also don't know whether General Charles Flynn and his brother Mike Flynn were in communication at all about anything on that day of the attack or anything in the lead up to the attack. We don't know that at all. So that's very unsettling. General Charles Flynn has since been put in charge of all U.S. Army forces in the Pacific, while his brother Mike is currently touring the country, appearing at events marketed to adherents of the QAnon conspiracy theory, telling them there really ought to be a military coup in this country to reinstall Trump in power, propounding the fantasy to his followers that Trump will be put back in as president sometime this year because the results of the last election shouldn't count and won't count much longer. Right? That's one brother, while the other brother is running the U.S. Army in the Pacific region, after being part of whatever decision-making process went so wrong at the Pentagon on January 6th that resulted in there being no help from the National Guard to save the Capitol for hours while it was being overrun by supporters of General Charlie Flynn's brother Mike and then President Trump.